The light in the room felt a little thinner than usual, not darker, just quieter, like it had learned to hold its breath. The air carried a soft smell of rain from somewhere far away, even though the windows were closed. A small clock in the corner kept ticking, but the sound seemed gentle, almost polite. Keanu stood still for a moment, feeling something in his chest that he could not name yet, like a thought trying to arrive without making noise. He did not feel sad exactly, and he did not feel angry, but he felt full, like a cup filled too long without being emptied. Outside, the street was calm, and the city sounded distant, like it was speaking from behind a curtain. He could hear a passing car, then nothing, then the faint hum of a building settling into the night. His shoulders were heavy in a way that did not come from carrying bags or working hard. It came from carrying expectations that nobody had said out loud. He had spent the whole day doing what people needed, smiling when the moment asked for it, listening when someone wanted to be heard, staying steady when the room felt shaky. He did it because it mattered, because being kind felt like the right thing, but tonight he felt the cost of being steady for so many hours. He walked into the home he shared with Alexandra, and everything looked normal, clean surfaces, soft shadows, familiar objects that usually made him feel safe. Still, something inside him stayed alert as if it was waiting for a sound that had not happened yet. He took off his shoes, placed them neatly, then paused again, not because he forgot something, but because he felt like he was stepping from one world into another. The day outside had been loud, full of voices, questions, and bright attention. This place was quiet, full of honest air, and that difference made his chest tighten with a strange tenderness. In the kitchen, a small lamp was on, and the light looked warm without trying too hard. A cup sat on the counter, half filled with water like someone had been there recently. He noticed the smallest things, a folded towel, a clean plate drying, a book left open on a chair. He usually liked noticing these details. They felt like proof of a simple life. Tonight, the details felt like messages he could not read. He listened for Alexandra, for footsteps, for a voice, for anything. There was only quiet, and the quiet seemed to ask him a question he was not ready to answer. Then he heard her not speaking, just moving softly in the next room. It was the sound of a page turning, then a gentle clink, like a ceramic cup meeting a table. It should have been comforting, and it was, but it also made him feel exposed, like his tiredness was visible even before he said a word. He took a slow breath, trying to let the air settle him. He told himself that he was fine. He told himself that a long day ends and tomorrow begins, and that was how life worked. But his body did not accept the simple story. His body carried the day like a long coat that he could not remove. Alexandra stepped into view, calm, unhurried, her hair loosely tied back, her face soft with that kind of focus that comes from reading and thinking. She did not rush to greet him with bright energy. She never did that, and he respected her for it. She looked at him with a gentle awareness, the kind that does not demand performance. Her eyes stayed on his face for a moment, then moved to his hands, then back again, like she was reading the quiet language he did not know he was speaking. She said hello, simple and warm. He answered the same way. His voice sounded normal, but he could hear a thin edge in it, like a string pulled too tight. She did not point it out. She moved closer, not too close, giving him space and giving him company at the same time. She asked if he had eaten. He said he had, which was true, but not fully true because he had eaten food, but he had not felt it. The day had turned meals into steps, not moments. They sat down in the living room where the lamp made a small circle of light. The rest of the room stayed dim and quiet. The couch felt familiar, the fabric cool, the cushion gentle under his weight. Alexandra sat beside him, her posture relaxed, her hands resting loosely in her lap. She did not lean into him like a movie scene. She did not fill the air with extra words. She simply stayed present, like a steady candle that does not flicker when the room is cold. Keanu tried to speak about the day, about the usual things, meetings, small conversations, the polite parts that fit into a simple story. He described it in a way that sounded fine, even successful. He mentioned people being kind, mentioned a few laughs, mentioned that everything went smoothly. Alexandra listened, nodding, her attention real. But he could feel the gap between his words and his body. His words were clean and simple. His body felt like it was carrying a hidden bag of stones. Alexandra did not interrupt, but after a moment she asked a question that did not sound like a question meant to gather facts. She asked if he felt like himself today. The words landed softly, but they hit a place in him that had been guarded all day. He blinked, and for a moment he could not answer. He looked down at his hands, and he noticed a small mark on his thumb, a tiny red line from something he could not remember touching. The mark felt like evidence of time, passing without him noticing. He said yes, then he stopped. The yes did not feel honest. It felt like a habit. He tried again. He said not exactly. His voice was quieter now. Alexandra did not react with surprise or worry. She just breathed in slow, like she was making room for truth to enter the room. Keanu felt his heart beat a little faster, not from fear, but from the pressure of being seen. All day, he had been seen by many people, but not like this. Those eyes had looked at him as a symbol, a face, a name. Alexandra looked at him as a person who could be tired, confused, and human. He wanted to protect that tenderness, but he also wanted to hide from it, because tenderness can feel like risk when you are already worn down. He told her that the day had been long. He said it had not been bad, just long. He said he had tried to be present for everyone, and he had been. He said he had smiled, he had listened, he had done what he needed to do. Then he paused, and the pause felt like standing at the edge of a door that he did not know how to open. He did not want to complain. He did not want to sound ungrateful. He did not want to bring shadows into a peaceful home. Alexandra spoke again softly. She said that being strong for others can be a kind thing, but it can also be a heavy thing. Her voice was calm, not dramatic. It sounded like truth said without force. Keanu swallowed, feeling his throat tighten. He nodded once small. He did not trust his voice yet. The room stayed quiet, and the quiet was not empty. It was full of what had not been said. Keanu felt something else now, not just tiredness. He felt a strange pull, like someone was asking him to remember something important that he had set down and forgotten. He did not know what it was, but he could feel it in the way his chest held its breath. Alexandra stood up and walked to a shelf. She returned with a small notebook, plain cover, nothing fancy. She placed it on the table, not pushing it toward him, just placing it there as if it belonged to the room. Keanu looked at it, confused. He did not remember seeing it before. His mind searched the last few days, but the day had been too full and the details blurred. Alexandra said she found it earlier, tucked under a stack of papers near the door. She said it did not look like hers. She said she did not open it fully, but she saw a page with his name written in careful handwriting. Keanu froze, not because he was scared, but because something inside him recognized the feeling of a hidden thread being pulled. He stared at the notebook, and his fingers did not move toward it yet. His mind raced through possibilities, simple ones, logical ones, but his heart felt a deeper signal, like this notebook was not an accident. Alexandra watched him with quiet respect. She did not ask him to explain. She did not touch the notebook again. She just waited, giving him the choice to step closer or step away. Keanu leaned forward slowly, like he was approaching something fragile. He placed his hand near the notebook, then stopped, almost as if he could feel heat coming from it. He looked at Alexandra, and his eyes asked a question without words. Alexandra answered without pushing. She said, "You do not have to read it tonight." She said, "We can just sit." She said, "But I think it found you for a reason." Her voice was gentle, and her face held no pressure, only care. Keanu took a slow breath, and he felt the air move deeper this time. He put his hand on the notebook, and the cover felt cool and real. He did not open it yet, but he felt the weight of it, like a small door to a story he did not remember starting. He looked down, then back up, and he realized something important. The conversation was not only about his long day. It was about a long pattern, a quiet habit, a hidden cost, and now something was asking to be seen. His fingers moved to the edge of the cover, ready to lift it, and the room seemed to hold its breath with him. The notebook stayed under his palm like a quiet heartbeat. The room felt warmer and colder at the same time, warm because Alexandra was there, cold because the cover held a question he could not predict. Keanu listened to the small sounds around him, the clock, the soft breath in his own chest, the faint settling of the building. He did not feel fear, but he felt that careful feeling a person gets right before truth changes the shape of a normal night. He lifted the cover slowly, not with drama, just with a kind of respect, like opening something that belonged to someone else. The first page had his name, written clearly, not rushed, not messy. Beneath it was a date, written in words, and a short line that made his throat tighten. It said, "For the days you say you are fine when you are not." He read it once, then again, as if his eyes did not trust what they were seeing. He looked up at Alexandra, and she did not move closer. She simply watched, steady, giving him space to feel what he needed to feel. He turned the page, and the handwriting continued, calm and careful. The words were not a letter exactly, and not a journal exactly. It felt more like a map, made by someone who had been paying attention to him in a way that did not ask for credit. The first entry was short, describing a moment from months ago when he stood in a hallway after a long day and stared at the floor for a full minute, as if his body forgot how to step forward. Keanu remembered that moment not clearly, but enough to feel exposed. He had thought nobody noticed. He had thought it was nothing. Alexandra spoke softly, as if she was afraid of breaking the fragile balance in the room. She said she did not know who wrote it. She said she found it near the door and she recognized his name and her own name on a later page. She said she stopped reading after that because it felt private. Her voice held respect, not curiosity. That made Keanu feel safer, and it also made him feel more emotional because safety can open doors inside a person that strength keeps locked. Keanu turned another page. The next entry described something even smaller, him pausing before a meeting, taking a deep breath, then walking in with a calm face. The writer described his calm face like a mask that was not fake but was heavy to hold for too long. Keanu felt his eyes sting, and he blinked until the feeling softened. He did not want to cry, not because crying was wrong, but because he did not want to make this moment too loud. The writing was already loud in its own quiet way. The pages continued, and each one held a moment that felt strangely familiar. Small details, the way he rubs his thumb when he is thinking too hard, the way he smiles when he is tired to protect other people from feeling awkward, the way he says, "I am good," even when his shoulders do not agree. The writer did not shame him for it. The writer described it with kindness, like someone saying, "I see you, and you do not have to carry this alone." Keanu closed the notebook for a second, pressing his fingers against the cover. He looked at Alexandra again. Her face was calm, but her eyes were attentive, as if she was listening to something deeper than words. He felt a strange suspicion rise in him, not suspicion of her, but suspicion of the situation. He asked quietly who would do this, who would watch me like this. It was not anger. It was confusion and a soft worry. Being seen can feel like care, but it can also feel like pressure if you do not know why it is happening. Alexandra answered carefully. She said it could be someone who cares about you. She said it could be someone who worries in silence. She said it could also be someone who feels guilty. Her last words made Keanu sit up a little. Guilty. He repeated the word softly, like tasting it. Guilt suggested history. Guilt suggested a moment when someone chose wrong, then chose to make it right in a hidden way. Keanu opened the notebook again, slower this time, searching for a sign. He flipped through pages until he found a section marked with a small pressed leaf, dried flat between paper. The page it marked had a new tone, still gentle but more direct. The writer described a night when Keanu came home later than usual, quiet and pale, and Alexandra asked if he was okay. The writer wrote that he said yes, and then he stood at the sink for a long time, letting water run, not using it for anything. Keanu felt a cold wave move through him. He remembered that night clearly now. He remembered the sound of the water. He remembered how he could not make his mind slow down. Below that, the writer had added a line that made his stomach drop. It said, "I did not mean to push you to be that strong. I did not know what I was asking from you." Keanu stared at the sentence. He tried to connect it to someone, to a voice, to a face, but nothing came quickly. He felt the suspense of it, the ache of not knowing. His mind started listing people, coworkers, friends, strangers, but the line felt personal, like it came from someone close enough to feel responsible. Alexandra leaned forward a little, not to take the notebook, but to share the moment with him. She asked, "Do you want me to leave the room?" Her question was pure respect. It gave him control. Keanu shook his head. He said, "Stay." He surprised himself by how quickly he said it. He did not want to face this alone. He did not want to hide again. He wanted to be human in front of the one person who never asked him to perform. He kept reading. The entries began to include small acts, not big heroic things, but quiet ones. The writer described leaving a bottle of water in his car on a hot day. The writer described turning off a bright hallway light before he came home late so his eyes would not strain. The writer described putting a note into a pocket once, not a dramatic note, just a simple reminder. Breathe before you speak. Keanu felt his chest tighten with a kind of gratitude that also hurt, because gratitude can hurt when it reveals how tired you really are. He paused and rubbed his thumb, then noticed it. The writer had described this exact gesture. He almost laughed at the strange loop of it, then the laugh turned into a breath that shook slightly. Alexandra noticed the change and placed her hand on the couch between them, not touching him yet, just offering the option. Keanu moved his hand closer until their fingers touched lightly. It was a small contact, but it felt like a promise that he did not have to hold himself together alone. The rising conflict in his mind became sharper. If someone knew him this well, why hide? Why leave this notebook near the door? Why now? The timing felt intentional. It felt like a door opening on the exact night he was too tired to keep pretending. Keanu looked at the date on the first page again. It was written as today. The notebook had been placed there today, not lost long ago. Someone had brought it, then left. Keanu stood up and walked to the door, slow and quiet. He checked the small table near the entryway. There was nothing else, no obvious clue, no envelope, no name. He looked at the floor, then noticed something he had not seen earlier, a faint damp mark near the door mat, like a shoe had stepped in rain and paused there. It was fresh. His heart beat faster, not from panic, but from the sense that someone had been very close, then disappeared. He returned to the couch with the notebook. Alexandra asked him what he felt. He said he felt seen. He said he felt grateful. Then he admitted the other feeling, the one he did not like. He said he felt watched, and he did not know what to do with that. Alexandra nodded, understanding both sides without judging either. She said it makes sense. She said care can look like mystery when it is hidden. She said we do not have to solve it tonight, but we can hold the truth that your tiredness is real. Keanu stared at the open page again. The writer had ended the entry with a sentence that felt like a quiet warning. It said, if you read this, it means you finally stopped running from your own silence. It also means I am running out of time to fix what I broke. Keanu felt a chill. Fix what I broke. Running out of time. The words carried urgency, but still no clear danger, only emotional stakes, the kind that can pull a person into a story without any loud event. Alexandra took a slow breath, then asked a question that changed the shape of the room. She asked, has anyone ever apologized to you in a way that felt unfinished? Keanu tried to answer, but his mind went blank, then a memory surfaced, small and sharp. A conversation from years ago, a person saying, I am sorry, then walking away before he could respond. He had forgotten the face, but he remembered the feeling. The feeling returned now, like a key turning. Keanu looked down at the notebook again, and for the first time he noticed a faint smudge on the edge of the page, like a fingerprint in graphite. He turned the notebook sideways under the lamp, and the smudge looked like it might be from charcoal or pencil. Alexandra, who worked with art and texture all her life, leaned in slightly and said it looked like someone who draws often. Her voice stayed soft, but the hint landed like a clue. Keanu whispered one name without meaning to. It was not a famous name. It was a private name from a quiet part of his life. The moment the name left his mouth, he felt a mix of regret and hope. Alexandra did not repeat it. She did not ask for details. She simply watched him with respect, letting him decide what to share. Keanu closed the notebook gently and held it against his chest for a second, like holding a fragile truth. He said, I think I know who this is. He said, and if I am right, then this is not just about me being tired. This is about someone trying to make peace before it is too late. Alexandra nodded once, her eyes steady. She said, then we will meet it with kindness, but we will also protect our peace. Keanu looked toward the door again, and the quiet in the house felt different now, not empty, but waiting. He felt like the long day had been only the surface of the story, and the real story had just stepped into the room and left a notebook behind. The night settled deeper outside, and the room seemed to listen along with them. The lamp light felt steadier now, like it had decided to stay. Keanu held the notebook on his lap without opening it again, feeling its weight through the cover. His mind stayed on the name he had whispered earlier, the way it had slipped out before he could stop it. The name carried history, not loud history, but the kind that lives quietly in the body and waits for the right moment to rise. Alexandra did not ask him to explain. She shifted slightly closer, not touching him yet, but close enough that he could feel the warmth of another person who was not asking him to be anything more than present. Keanu breathed in and out slowly, trying to hear his own thoughts clearly. He realized how rare that feeling had become. The day had been full of voices. This moment was full of meaning. He finally spoke, choosing his words carefully. He said the name belonged to someone from years ago, someone who had once depended on him in a way that felt heavier than he knew how to carry back then. He said he had tried to help, but he had also set boundaries that felt necessary at the time. He said the person accepted those boundaries on the surface, but something in their eyes had stayed unresolved. Alexandra listened, her face calm, her posture open, like she was holding space rather than collecting information. Keanu opened the notebook again, this time with intention. He flipped past the familiar entries until he reached pages he had not read yet. The handwriting stayed the same, but the tone shifted again, becoming more urgent without becoming dramatic. The writer described moments of regret, not in big speeches, but in small realizations. The writer described understanding too late that asking someone to always be strong can be its own kind of harm. Keanu felt his chest tighten, because the words felt uncomfortably close to conversations he remembered. One entry described a conversation from long ago, a late evening, a quiet room, a choice made with good intentions but limited understanding. Keanu recognized it immediately. The details matched. The writer described leaving that night believing everything was settled, only to realize later that silence is not the same as peace. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, and the memory filled in the rest. He remembered how tired he had been that night, too. He remembered choosing clarity over softness, believing that honesty alone was enough. Alexandra watched him closely now, not because she needed answers, but because she could see the shift happening in him. She said softly that sometimes people do their best with the tools they have, and sometimes they only learn what was missing much later. Her words did not excuse harm, but they did not accuse either. They created a bridge instead of a wall. Keanu nodded slowly. He said he did not regret being honest back then. He said he regretted not noticing how much weight the other person was carrying. He said he had assumed strength where there was actually quiet struggle. Saying it out loud made his voice shake slightly, and he let it happen. He did not correct it. He did not hide it. He turned the page again, and this time he found something unexpected. Tucked between two pages was a folded piece of paper, smaller than the rest. It looked newer. The paper felt crisp compared to the worn softness of the notebook. Keanu unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was the same, but the words were fewer, more direct. It said, "If you are reading this now, it means I finally found the courage to return something I borrowed. It means I am nearby, but I am not sure if I should be seen yet." The sentence made his heart beat faster. Nearby, not far away, not gone, nearby. He looked up at Alexandra, and for the first time since the evening began, there was clear urgency in his eyes. She did not panic. She stayed grounded. She asked where he thought the person might be. Keanu shook his head. He said he did not know, but he felt certain they had been close tonight. The damp mark by the door returned to his mind, clearer now. Keanu stood and walked slowly toward the window. He pulled the curtain aside just enough to look out. The street was quiet, lit by soft streetlights that made the wet pavement shine faintly. There were no people standing there, no obvious figure waiting. Still, he felt watched, not in a threatening way, but in a hesitant way, like someone standing just outside the circle of light. He let the curtain fall back into place. He returned to the couch, and his thoughts raced, but not wildly. They moved with purpose now. The rising conflict inside him took shape. He wanted to find the person, to speak, to resolve what had been left unfinished. At the same time, he feared reopening something painful, something that had taken years to settle quietly inside him. He said this out loud, naming both sides. Alexandra appreciated that honesty. She said both instincts made sense. She said kindness does not mean rushing into old wounds without care. Keanu picked up the notebook again and continued reading. The later entries described preparation, not dramatic plans, but small steps. The writer described practicing what to say, then crossing it out. The writer described writing apologies, then deciding not to deliver them yet. The writer described waiting for a sign that Keanu was ready to hear something without carrying it alone. Keanu felt a strange mix of responsibility and relief. Responsibility because someone was clearly responding to his presence. Relief because he was not imagining the connection. The twist arrived quietly, without announcement. On one of the last pages, the writer mentioned Alexandra by name. Not in jealousy, not in distance, but in gratitude. The writer described watching Keanu change after meeting her, described seeing him learn to rest without guilt, to speak with more softness. The writer wrote that this change made it possible to finally return, because now there was someone who could help him carry the truth without breaking. Keanu felt stunned. He had assumed this story belonged to a closed chapter of his life. Realizing that the person had been watching from afar, noticing his growth, noticing his relationship, changed the meaning of everything. It was not just about fixing the past. It was about honoring the present. Alexandra read the line over his shoulder and felt the weight of it. She did not feel threatened. She felt included, trusted. Alexandra spoke with calm clarity. She said this person did not want to replace anything. They wanted to complete something. She said the notebook was not an intrusion, but an offering. Keanu nodded, feeling the truth of it settle. The tension in the room shifted again, from fear of the unknown to readiness for encounter. Another folded page fell from the notebook as Keanu turned it. This one contained an address, written simply, without explanation. The address was familiar, too familiar. It belonged to a small community space where Keanu had once volunteered quietly years ago, a place he had not visited in a long time. Seeing it brought a rush of memories, not painful ones, but grounded ones, moments where he felt useful without being seen. Alexandra noticed the change in his face and asked what the place was. Keanu explained, his voice steadier now. He said it was where he had met the person whose name he whispered earlier. He said the place represented a time when both of them were searching for direction. He said he had left that place behind when life became louder. Alexandra listened, then said something that reframed everything. She said maybe the return was not about the past at all, but about remembering who you were before the noise. Keanu felt a quiet clarity spread through him. The suspense he felt was no longer sharp, it was focused. He said he felt like he needed to go there, not immediately, not impulsively, but soon. He said the notebook felt like an invitation, not a demand. Alexandra agreed. She said they would decide together how to respond. She said no one would be chased and no one would be ignored. Just then, a soft sound came from near the door. Not a knock, not a ring, just the faint click of something being placed carefully on the floor. Both of them froze. The sound was unmistakable in the quiet house. Someone was there or had just been there. Keanu and Alexandra exchanged a look that held no fear, only alertness. Keanu stood slowly and walked toward the door, his heart steady but loud in his ears. He opened the door to an empty hallway. The air outside was cool and smelled of rain. On the floor lay a small object wrapped in plain paper. Keanu bent down and picked it up. It was light. He brought it back inside and placed it on the table. Alexandra stood beside him. They unwrapped it together. Inside was a simple key with a small tag attached. On the tag was written one word, tomorrow. Keanu felt the moment settle deep inside him. The mystery was no longer abstract. It had stepped close enough to leave something behind. He looked at Alexandra and she met his gaze with calm trust. Whatever was coming next would require courage, patience, and kindness in equal measure. The long day had opened into a longer story, and the quiet conversation had become the doorway. The key rested on the table like it belonged there, simple and unassuming, yet impossible to ignore. The paper wrapping lay beside it, carefully unfolded as if even the act of leaving it had been done with care. Keanu stared at the word on the tag, tomorrow, and felt time slow in a way he had not felt in years. Tomorrow was close enough to touch, yet far enough to carry weight. Alexandra stood beside him, her presence steady, grounding the moment without taking it over. They did not speak right away. The silence felt different now, fuller, shaped by intention rather than uncertainty. Keanu picked up the key and turned it slowly between his fingers. It was worn smooth in places like it had been used often, then kept safe for a long time. He wondered what it opened, but more than that, he wondered what it closed. Keys often carry both meanings, and the thought made his chest tighten with anticipation and care. Alexandra finally broke the silence, her voice low and thoughtful. She said that whoever left this was not running. She said the choice of tomorrow meant patience, not pressure. Keanu nodded. He felt the same thing. This was not a demand for forgiveness or a confrontation waiting to explode. It felt like an invitation to step into something unfinished with respect. They sat back down together, the key between them on the table like a quiet third presence. Keanu felt the tiredness of the day return for a moment, but it had changed shape. It was no longer heavy and dull. It felt purposeful, like the kind of tiredness that comes before something meaningful. He told Alexandra that part of him was afraid, not of the person, but of reopening a version of himself that he had carefully folded away. He said he was not sure who he would be when that door opened. Alexandra listened closely, then said something that surprised him. She said he did not have to be any version of himself except the one he already was. She said growth does not erase the past, but it does give it context. Her words settled into him gently, like warm water. He realized how rarely he allowed himself to be uncertain without judging it. The night passed quietly after that. They did not plan the next day in detail. They did not rehearse conversations or imagine outcomes. They agreed on one thing only, that they would face whatever came with honesty and care. When they finally went to rest, Keanu noticed how quickly sleep found him, as if his body sensed that something important was being held with him, not against him. Morning arrived softly. Pale light filtered through the windows, and the air felt clean, like the world had reset just enough. Keanu woke before Alexandra and lay still for a moment, listening to the calm rhythm of the house. The key rested on the table where they had left it. Seeing it again made his heart beat faster, but not wildly. It felt steady, ready. They shared a quiet breakfast, simple food, simple movements. Alexandra asked how he felt. Keanu searched for the right word and settled on open. It surprised him how accurate it felt. He was open, not unguarded, but willing. Alexandra smiled gently, proud without being loud. When they stepped outside later, the city felt different. Familiar streets carried a new layer of meaning. The address from the notebook stayed clear in Keanu's mind, guiding him without urgency. As they walked, he noticed small details he usually missed, the way sunlight reflected off windows, the sound of distant voices blending into a soft hum. It felt like walking toward a memory that had learned how to breathe again. The community space appeared at the end of the block, modest and unchanged. The building looked the same as it had years ago, worn paint, simple entrance, a feeling of welcome without decoration. Keanu stopped a few steps away, his breath catching slightly. This place held echoes, conversations, choices that had shaped him more than he realized at the time. Alexandra waited beside him, not pushing, not pulling. Keanu took out the key. His hand trembled just enough for him to notice. He reminded himself to breathe. He reminded himself that he was not here to fix everything, only to be present. The key fit the lock smoothly, as if it had been waiting. When the door opened, the sound was soft, almost respectful. Inside, the space was quiet, but alive chairs were stacked neatly. Sunlight fell across the floor in familiar patterns. It felt untouched by time in the best way. Then Keanu saw the person standing near the far wall. Older now, quieter but unmistakable. Their eyes met, and in that instant, years folded into a single breath. The person did not rush forward. They did not apologize immediately. They simply stood there, hands relaxed at their sides, face open with a mix of nerves and relief. Keanu felt a wave of emotion rise, but he stayed steady. Alexandra stood slightly behind him, offering silent support without stepping into the moment. The person spoke first, their voice calm but honest. They said thank you for coming. They said they were not sure Keanu would. Keanu answered simply that he felt it was time. The air between them felt charged, not with anger, but with everything that had been held back too carefully. The person gestured toward a small room off to the side. They said they had kept it as it was, not out of obsession, but out of respect. Inside the room were drawings, sketches, notes, evidence of a life shaped by influence and regret. Keanu understood now what the notebook meant by returning something borrowed. This person had taken strength from him once, then spent years learning how to give it back without asking for praise. The twist settled fully when the person admitted the truth. They said the night Keanu set boundaries years ago had saved them, even though it hurt. They said the pain pushed them to grow, but the silence afterward left something unresolved. They said they carried guilt not because Keanu failed them, but because they never said thank you. They never said goodbye with peace. Keanu felt tears rise, but he did not stop them. He allowed them to exist quietly. He told the person that hearing this mattered. He told them he was sorry for the weight they carried alone. Alexandra stepped forward then, her voice gentle. She said growth often looks lonely from the outside, but it does not have to stay that way. The tension in the room softened. The past did not disappear, but it lost its sharp edges. They talked quietly, honestly, without blame. The conversation did not solve everything, but it healed something essential. As they prepared to leave, the person handed Keanu the notebook, now complete. They said it belonged to him now. Outside, the air felt lighter. Keanu held the notebook and the key, understanding both now. One opened a door, the other closed a loop. He looked at Alexandra with gratitude deeper than words. The quiet conversation had become a turning point, and yet he sensed that the story was not finished yet. The walk back felt slower, not because of distance, but because every step carried meaning. The notebook rested under Keanu's arm, the key warm in his pocket, no longer heavy with mystery, but full of memory. The morning light shifted as clouds moved gently above, and the city seemed quieter, like it was giving space to what had just happened. Alexandra walked beside him, close enough to share warmth, far enough to let his thoughts settle naturally. Keanu did not speak right away. His chest felt open in a way that was unfamiliar. The meeting had not been dramatic, and yet it had changed something deep inside him. He realized how much energy he had spent over the years holding himself steady for others without checking if he himself was standing on solid ground. The conversation had not accused him. It had not demanded forgiveness. It had simply returned truth to its rightful place. When they reached home, Keanu placed the notebook on the table and sat down quietly. Alexandra watched him with calm attention. She asked how he felt now, not pressing for clarity, only offering space. Keanu searched for the right words. He said he felt lighter, but also more responsible. He said he understood now that kindness is not only about giving strength, but also about allowing others to stand on their own. Saying this out loud made the idea real. Alexandra nodded. She said strength shared without awareness can become weight. She said kindness paired with respect creates balance. Her words were not advice. They were reflections. Keanu felt grateful for how she always spoke beside him, not above him. The day moved forward gently. They made tea, simple and warm. Steam rose slowly from the cups, curling into the quiet air. Keanu noticed how present he felt in small actions, holding the cup, feeling its warmth, listening to the sound of water settling. These moments felt like proof that he was no longer rushing past himself. Later that afternoon, Keanu opened the notebook again, this time without tension. He read the final pages carefully. The writer described letting go, not of regret, but of silence. They described understanding that growth does not require applause, only honesty. Keanu felt respect grow in him, not only for the person who wrote it, but for the version of himself who had stayed kind even when unsure. He closed the notebook and placed it back on the table. He realized something important then. The story was not only about the past being healed, it was about the present being protected. He turned to Alexandra and said he wanted to make a change, not a dramatic one, a quiet one. He said he wanted to learn how to rest without guilt. He said he wanted to speak sooner when something felt heavy instead of carrying it alone. Alexandra smiled softly. She said she would walk with him in that. She said kindness begins with listening, even to yourself. Her hand rested over his for a moment, grounding the promise without turning it into pressure. As evening approached, Keanu felt an unexpected pull, not toward the past but toward the community space they had visited earlier. He told Alexandra that he felt called to return once more, not to meet anyone, but to give something back. She understood immediately. Some places hold energy that needs closure through action, not words. They returned as the sun lowered, painting the street in gentle light. Keanu entered the space alone this time, while Alexandra waited nearby. Inside, the room felt familiar again, but now it felt complete. Keanu walked slowly, taking in the walls, the quiet, the memories. He placed the notebook on a small table in the center of the room, open to a blank page. He sat down and began to write. Not as a public statement, not as an explanation, just a note. He wrote about rest, about boundaries, about the importance of not asking someone to be strong all the time. He wrote with humility, knowing his words might be read by someone who needed them. He signed it simply, without titles or explanation. When he finished, he closed the notebook and placed it carefully where it could be found by someone else. He felt no need to control who that would be. Kindness does not need direction to work. Outside, Alexandra met him with a calm smile. She could see the shift in him clearly now. His posture was lighter. His eyes were open in a different way, not guarded, not distant. Present. Keanu told her what he had done. She nodded, proud without showing it loudly. She said the most meaningful acts are often the quietest. On the way home, Keanu felt a new sense of suspense inside him, but it was not fear. It was anticipation. He understood that choosing kindness again and again is not easy. It requires awareness. It requires courage. The story was not ending, it was deepening. That night, as they sat together in the soft light, Keanu reflected on the long day that had begun with heaviness. The quiet conversation had grown into a turning point. He realized that inspiration does not always arrive as motivation. Sometimes it arrives as relief. Sometimes it arrives as understanding. Alexandra asked him one final question before they rested. She asked what he wanted to carry forward from this experience. Keanu answered without hesitation. He said presence. He said honesty. He said respect for his own limits, saying it felt like setting a foundation, not a goal. The room settled into silence again, but this time the silence felt kind. It held no unanswered questions. It held patience. Keanu understood now that the climax was not the meeting or the key or the notebook. The climax was the choice to live differently going forward. As he turned off the lamp, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Peace that did not come from resolution, but from alignment. The story had reached a moment of calm, but one final chapter still waited, not to resolve tension, but to show what kindness truly looks like when lived. Morning arrived without urgency, light entering the room gently, as if it understood the kind of day this needed to be. Keanu woke with a calm breath, not the heavy tiredness he once carried, but a quiet readiness. The long day from before felt distant now, not forgotten, but transformed into something useful. Alexandra was already awake, sitting nearby, reading in silence. She looked up and smiled, not to ask anything, not to check on him, just to share the moment. They did not rush the day. There were no plans written down, no expectations spoken aloud. Keanu felt something new in his body, a respect for his own pace. He realized that strength did not leave him when he slowed down. It became clearer. He spoke to Alexandra about this realization, and she listened with warmth, reminding him that balance is not found once but practiced daily. Later, Keanu returned alone to the community space one final time, not to search, not to explain, but to close the door with care. The notebook was gone. Someone had found it. That was enough. He placed the key on the table, leaving it there without regret. Keys do not need to be kept when doors have served their purpose. As he stepped outside, he felt light, not because life had become simple, but because it had become honest. He understood now that kindness is not just an action toward others. It is a way of living that includes yourself. Respect is not something you earn by exhaustion. It is something you protect by listening. That evening, Keanu and Alexandra sat together as the sky darkened slowly. There was no big conversation, no final lesson spoken out loud, just presence, just shared silence filled with understanding. The long day had led to one quiet conversation, and that conversation had reshaped how he would meet every day after. Kindness had come full circle, not loud, not visible to the world, but steady and real. And that was enough.